You didn't lose her. You lost the version of yourself that needed her to feel whole. And that right there, that single realization, is the beginning of everything. Not the end. The beginning. Most men never get there. They spend months, sometimes years, refreshing her Instagram, replaying conversations in their heads at 2 a.m., wondering what they did wrong, wondering if they should text her one more time, just one more time, just to see. They don't realize that the pain they're drowning in isn't punishment. It's preparation. The universe doesn't break you for no reason. It breaks you because what you were before wasn't strong enough for where you're going. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, a journal he never intended for anyone to read. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He wasn't writing that for an audience. He wasn't trying to sound wise. He was reminding himself, a man who ruled the most powerful empire on earth, that even he could not control what happened to him. He could only control what happened inside him. She left. That's an outside event. What you do next, that's entirely yours. Let me tell you something that nobody in your life is going to say to your face right now. Your friends will tell you she wasn't worth it. Your family will tell you you'll find someone better. Social media will sell you the idea that you should be out here acting unbothered, posting gym selfies, pretending you're fine. But none of that is the truth. The truth is harder and cleaner and more powerful than any of that noise. The truth is you needed this. Not because you're broken. Not because you deserve pain. But because you were living inside a comfort zone disguised as a relationship, and comfort zones don't build men. Pressure does. Loss does. Silence does. Think about what the last few weeks have actually looked like for you. You wake up and the first thought is her. You go through your day and everything reminds you of her. A song. A restaurant. The way the light looks at a certain time in the evening. You pick up your phone 100 times and put it back down. You feel this hollow space in your chest that you keep trying to fill with distraction, Netflix, food, scrolling, anything. And nothing works. Nothing fills it. Good. Don't fill it yet. Sit in it. Epictetus, who was born a slave and became one of the greatest philosophical minds in human history, said something that most people skip over because it sounds too simple. He said, "Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life." Read that again. He's not telling you to be okay with pain. He's telling you to stop fighting reality. She left. That is reality. The moment you stop spending energy fighting that fact is the moment all that energy becomes available to you, for yourself. This is what Stoicism actually is. Not cold detachment. Not pretending you don't feel things. Not becoming some emotionless robot who quotes philosophy at people. It's the practice of facing reality so clearly, so honestly, that you can move through it instead of being trapped in it. And here's what moving through it actually looks like, because nobody gives you the real map. The first stage is grief, and most men rush through it or suppress it completely because they've been taught that feeling things is weakness. It's not. Feeling things is data. When you feel the loss of her, you're also learning what you actually valued, what you actually need, what kind of man you actually want to be. That grief, when you sit with it honestly instead of running from it, becomes information. And information is power. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And he was right, but here's the part people miss. You have to actually experience the reality to escape the imagination. You can't skip the feeling. You can only move through it. Every time you numb it, you delay it. Every time you distract yourself from it, you guarantee you'll carry it longer. So feel it. Fully. Give yourself permission to feel the weight of it without judgment. Without telling yourself you shouldn't feel this way. Without comparing yourself to how you think other men handle breakups. Just feel it, completely, and watch what happens on the other side. Because here's what's on the other side, and this is the part no one talks about, the part the algorithm won't show you, the part your friends don't know because most of them have never gone through it consciously. On the other side of fully felt grief is clarity. Real clarity. The kind of clarity you cannot manufacture when life is comfortable. You start to see things you couldn't see before. You start to see who you actually were in that relationship, not who you thought you were, not who you wanted to be, but who you actually showed up as. And that's uncomfortable. That's supposed to be uncomfortable. Because you're finally being honest with yourself in a way that requires no audience and no approval. Marcus Aurelius did this every single morning. He sat with himself, not with anyone else's opinion of him, not with the praise of his empire, not with the comfort of his status, just himself, and he asked hard questions. What did I do wrong? What could I have done better? Where did I act from fear instead of virtue? He called this practice journaling, but it was really just radical self-honesty. And it made him one of the most effective leaders in history. You have the same tool available to you right now. Tonight. At 2 a.m. when you can't sleep. Instead of reaching for your phone, reach for a notebook. Write down everything. Not to process it for anyone else. Not to send her eventually. Just for you. Write what you're feeling. Write what you're afraid of. Write what you actually want your life to look like. Write who you want to become. Because here's the thing about heartbreak that men who come out the other side stronger all eventually realize. A breakup doesn't just end a relationship. It ends a version of you. And the question is whether you let that version die quietly, or whether you consciously decide what gets built in its place. The men who stay stuck are the ones who try to resurrect the old version. They go back to the same habits, the same patterns, the same way of showing up in the world, and then they wonder why they keep attracting the same situations. The men who transform are the ones who use the empty space, the space where she used to be, to figure out who they actually are when no one is watching. When no one is validating them. When no one is there to make them feel like enough. Because that's the real work, Yar. The work of becoming a man who is enough on his own. Not in an arrogant way. Not in a way that means you don't need or want love. But in a way that means your foundation, your sense of self, your values, your identity, is built on something that can't be taken away when someone walks out the door. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And most men, if they're honest, hand that mastery over the moment they fall in love. They let their mood depend on her mood. They let their confidence depend on her validation. They let their sense of direction depend on the relationship. And when it ends, they don't just lose her, they lose themselves. Because they'd been living in her shadow without knowing it. This is not a criticism. This is just what happens when no one teaches you how to love without losing yourself. And most of us were never taught that. We were taught to pursue, to win, to hold on. We were never taught how to be whole first. So how do you build that wholeness now? Here's the actual process. Not theory, not quotes, actual steps that work. First, you rebuild your relationship with your own time. When you're in a relationship, especially a serious one, your time is shared by default. You make plans around another person. Your evenings, your weekends, your free hours, all of it gets structured around someone else's presence. When that person leaves, you suddenly have all this time back, and it feels like emptiness. It's not emptiness. It's space. And the question is what you fill it with intentionally. Don't fill it with things that numb. Fill it with things that build. This is not a cliché. There's a neurological reason for this. When you're in grief, your dopamine system is dysregulated. You've lost the source of reward. And your brain, which is wired for survival, will desperately seek replacement rewards. Social media, alcohol, junk food, meaningless hookups, these are all your brain trying to patch a hole with the wrong material. They work short-term and make it worse long-term. What actually recalibrates your dopamine system is achievement. Small, consistent achievement. Not massive life changes overnight. Just showing up for yourself every single day in ways that are slightly harder than the day before. A workout. A chapter of a book. A cold shower. A skill you've been putting off learning. A conversation with someone who challenges your thinking. These small acts of self-discipline send a signal to your nervous system. You are safe, you are capable, you are moving forward. Marcus Aurelius was writing about this 2,000 years ago. Confine yourself to the present, not the past, where she exists in your memory as something perfect that you've lost. Not the future, where your anxiety lives in worst-case scenarios. The present. This moment. What can you do right now that serves the man you're trying to become? Second, you rebuild your standards. And I don't mean standards for women. I mean standards for yourself. Most men, after a breakup, drop their standards for themselves. They stop going to the gym. They stop eating well. They let their environment get chaotic. They stop waking up at a decent hour. They stop working toward their goals. And then they wonder why they feel terrible. Your external environment is always a reflection of your internal state, and it works the other way too. Clean your space. It signals to your brain that you're in control. Get your sleep schedule back. It regulates everything: your mood, your decision-making, your emotional resilience. Get physical. Your body holds grief in a real, physical way, and movement is one of the fastest ways to process it. These aren't tips. They're non-negotiables. The Stoics understood that the body and mind are not separate. You cannot have a disciplined mind in an undisciplined body. Discipline is the practice of honoring your future self over your present comfort. And right now, your future self needs you to show up. Third, and this is the one most men skip entirely, you do the honest audit. You sit down and you ask yourself, without defensiveness, without self-pity, what did I actually bring to that relationship? Where was I not fully present? Where did I communicate poorly? Where did I prioritize the wrong things? Where did I lose myself? Where was I not the man I needed to be, not for her, but for me? This is not about blame. It's not about beating yourself up. It's about learning. Because if you don't learn from this relationship, you'll recreate it in the next one. Different person, same dynamic. Same patterns, same outcomes. The men who break the cycle are the men who do the honest audit without running from what they find. Seneca wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." That line has become a cliché, but its truth hasn't aged a day. This ending, her walking away, this chapter closing, is not a verdict on your worth. It's a doorway. But you have to be willing to walk through it consciously. With your eyes open. With honesty about who you were and intention about who you're becoming. Because the man on the other side of this, if you do the work, is unrecognizable to the man who's reading this right now. Not because you'll have forgotten her. Not because the pain won't have happened. But because you will have used the pain as fuel instead of letting it use you. There's a concept in Stoic philosophy called amor fati, love of fate. It was Nietzsche who coined the phrase, but the Stoics lived the principle. It means not just accepting what happens to you, but actively loving it. Not in a masochistic way. In a transformational way. The idea that everything that happens, the good, the painful, the devastating, is exactly what was needed for you to become who you're meant to be. She left. And maybe she was supposed to. Maybe the relationship had run its course, not because either of you was a bad person, but because you had both taken each other as far as you could go together. Maybe the next version of you, the one that's built on self-knowledge and discipline and genuine wholeness, needs to be built alone first. Maybe who you're going to be in your next relationship, or in your life, requires this exact period of solitude and reconstruction. That's not a consolation prize. That's an invitation. Marcus Aurelius lost people throughout his life. He lost his mentor. He lost children. He ruled an empire through plague and war and betrayal. And through all of it, he kept writing in his journal, kept returning to the same practice of honest self-examination, kept choosing virtue over comfort, kept building himself back up from the inside. Not because life was fair. Not because the universe owed him anything. But because he understood that the only thing any man truly controls is the quality of his own response to what life brings him. You control that too. Right now. Tonight. In this moment. The grief is real. The loss is real. But so is your capacity to transform it into something that makes you more clear, more grounded, more capable of real love, real connection, real impact, than you were before she walked out. She left. And that's when he finally found himself. Don't waste the finding. If this hits something real in you, something you haven't been able to put into words, drop it in the comments. Tell me where you are right now. Because you're not as alone in this as it feels at 2 a.m. And if you want more of this, the real Stoic principles that actually apply to modern life, to relationships, to becoming the man you know you're capable of being, subscribe. This channel exists for exactly this moment. For exactly the man you're becoming right now. Most men think the story ends when she walks out. They think that's the period at the end of the sentence. But it's not a period. It's a comma. And what comes after that comma, that's the part that defines everything. Here's what nobody prepares you for. The silence. Not just her absence, the silence inside yourself that her absence reveals. Because when you're in a relationship, there's always noise. Plans, conversations, the constant background hum of another person's presence in your life. And when that stops, suddenly you're alone with yourself in a way that most men haven't been in years. And for a lot of men, that's terrifying. Not because they're weak, but because they've never actually met themselves. Not the real version. Not the version that exists underneath the role of boyfriend, partner, provider, pleaser. The silence is where the real work begins. Epictetus didn't have the luxury of distraction. As a slave in ancient Rome, he had nothing, no status, no freedom, no possessions, no guarantee of tomorrow. And yet he developed a philosophy of inner freedom so powerful that it survived 2,000 years and still applies to exactly what you're going through tonight. He said, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." What is in your power right now? Not her decision. Not whether she comes back. Not whether she's moved on. Those things are completely outside your control. What's inside your control is how you use this silence. How you use this space. What you build inside it. And I want to talk about something specific that most Stoic content never touches: the identity crisis that comes after a serious relationship ends. Because it's real and it's dangerous, and it's the reason so many men make terrible decisions in the weeks and months after a breakup. When you've been with someone for a significant period of time, your identity gets entangled with theirs. This is not a flaw in you, it's just how deep human connection works. You become, partially, who you are in relation to them. Her needs shaped your habits. Her preferences shaped your choices. Her presence shaped your sense of home. And when she leaves, you don't just lose her, you lose the structure that she represented in your life. The routine. The sense of purpose that came from being needed. The version of yourself that made sense inside that relationship. This is why breakups feel like death. Because in a very real psychological sense, something has died. A version of you has ended. The Stoics had a practice for exactly this kind of moment. They called it memento mori. Remember that you will die. Not as a morbid obsession, but as a clarifying force. When you truly internalize the reality of your own mortality, the small things fall away and what actually matters becomes incredibly clear. Apply that same lens to this moment. You will not live forever. The time you have is finite. The question is not whether you feel pain right now, you do, and that's okay. The question is whether, 5 years from now, looking back at this period of your life, you want to see a man who was paralyzed by loss or a man who used it as the catalyst for everything he became. That question, sit with it. Really sit with it. Because the answer to that question is not determined by what happens to you. It's determined by what you decide right now about who you're going to be. Here's something that took me a long time to understand about masculine strength, real strength, not the performative kind. Real strength is not the absence of need. It's the refusal to let need become dependency. You can want love deeply, completely, without your entire sense of self collapsing when it's taken away. That's not coldness. That's not emotional unavailability. That's the foundation of a man who can actually love well, because he loves from wholeness instead of from lack. Most men love from lack. They love desperately, clinging, because they need the relationship to feel okay. And relationships built on that kind of need don't breathe. They suffocate. And eventually, inevitably, the other person feels that weight and they need to get free of it. Not because they don't care, but because no one can be responsible for another person's wholeness. It's too much weight for any human being to carry. So what she left, if you're honest, might not have been you at your best. It might have been you at your most dependent. And the version of you that gets built in this silence, in this space, in this uncomfortable reconstruction period, that version is capable of something the previous version wasn't. A love that doesn't grasp. A connection that doesn't suffocate. A partnership between two whole people instead of two incomplete ones trying to complete each other. Marcus Aurelius wrote something in Meditations that I want you to read slowly. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Read that again. The thing blocking you, the pain, the loss, the emptiness, it's not blocking your path. It is your path. The obstacle is the way through. This breakup is not something that happened to you before your real life begins. It is your real life. And how you navigate it is who you are. Now let's talk about something practical that nobody discusses honestly, the temptation to go back. Because it's coming, if it hasn't already. A moment, maybe at night, maybe after a song, maybe completely randomly in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday, where everything in you wants to reach out. To text her. To call her. To say something that reopens the door. And in that moment, your brain will generate 100 reasons why it makes sense. I just want to check in. I just want closure. Maybe we were too hasty. Maybe if I just explained myself better this time. This is not love talking. This is your nervous system in withdrawal. And I need you to understand the difference because confusing them will cost you everything you've started to build. Your brain, at a neurochemical level, processes romantic attachment through the same pathways as addiction. The loss of a relationship triggers the same responses as withdrawal from a substance. The craving to reach out is real, it's neurological, not rational. And just like with any addiction, giving in to the craving doesn't resolve it. It resets it. You reach out, you get a response or you don't, the craving intensifies, and you're back at day one of rebuilding yourself. The Stoics understood the power of the pause. Epictetus said, "Between stimulus and response there's a space. In that space is our power to choose our response." That urge to text her, that's the stimulus. Your response is not mandatory. You have space. You have choice. Use it. Every time you choose not to reach out from a place of desperation, you are building something. You're building evidence to yourself that you are capable of self-governance. That you are not controlled by your impulses. That you are becoming the kind of man who acts from intention rather than reaction. And that evidence accumulates. Day by day. Choice by choice. Until one morning you wake up and realize the urge has quieted, not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring about yourself more. And here's the paradox that the universe seems to operate on. The moment you genuinely stop needing her to come back is the moment you become the kind of man she might actually want to come back to. Not because you're playing games. Not because you're following some manipulation strategy. But because genuine self-possession, a man who is full, grounded, moving forward with or without you, is one of the most attractive things a human being can encounter. But here's the more important truth, by the time you get there, you might not want her back. Because you'll have grown past the version of yourself that needed what that relationship offered. You'll have a clearer picture of what you actually need, what you're actually worth, and what kind of partnership actually serves the man you're becoming. And that clarity is worth more than any relationship you might have rushed back into from a place of fear and loneliness. Seneca wrote, "It is not that I am brave, it is that I know what is worth fearing." What's worth fearing is not being alone. What's worth fearing is becoming a man who never does the work, who keeps repeating the same patterns, attracting the same dynamics, wondering why nothing ever changes. That is the real danger. Not solitude. Not the discomfort of rebuilding. Those things are just temporary. The man you become through them is permanent. Let me tell you about a specific moment that happens in the reconstruction process. And I'm telling you this so you recognize it when it comes, because most men don't. There's a moment, usually somewhere between 6 weeks and 3 months after a serious breakup, where the grief lifts enough that you start to feel something unexpected. Not happiness exactly. Something quieter and more solid than happiness. A kind of okayness with yourself that you haven't felt in a long time, maybe that you've never felt. A morning where you wake up and the first thought isn't her. Where you go through your day and you catch yourself being present in it, actually in it, not just passing through it waiting to feel better. That moment is significant. Don't rush past it. Don't immediately fill it with the next woman or the next distraction. Sit in it. Recognize it for what it is, the first real evidence that you are becoming someone who can hold himself. That's the foundation. Everything else gets built on that. Marcus Aurelius spent decades building that kind of internal foundation. Not because his life was easy, it was extraordinarily hard. But because he understood that a man without that foundation is at the mercy of every circumstance, every loss, every change. And a man with it, a man who knows who he is regardless of what's happening around him, that man is genuinely free. Not free from pain. Not free from loss. But free in the way that actually matters, free to choose his response, free to maintain his values, free to keep moving toward who he's decided to be. That freedom is available to you. Not someday. Not after enough time has passed. Now. In how you spend the next hour. In whether you reach for your phone or reach for your journal. In whether you stay in bed or lace up your shoes. In whether you replay the relationship in your head or sit with the question of who you want to become. Every moment is a vote. And you're voting right now, with how you respond to this, with what you do tonight, with the choices you make tomorrow morning. You're casting votes for the man you're becoming. Make them count. Because she left. And yes, it hurts. And yes, the silence is loud. And yes, some nights are going to be harder than you expected. All of that is true. And also true, simultaneously in the same moment, is that something is being built in you right now that could not have been built any other way. A resilience. A self-knowledge. A clarity about what you value and who you are and what you will and will not accept, in others and in yourself. That is not a small thing. That is everything. The Stoics didn't promise that life would be painless. They promised something better, that a man who knows himself, who governs himself, who acts from his values regardless of circumstance, that man cannot be truly broken. He can be hurt. He can grieve. He can feel the full weight of loss. And he comes through it more himself than he was before. More solid. More real. More capable of the life he actually wants. That's who you're becoming. Right now. In this exact moment of your life that feels like an ending. It's not an ending. You know that now. Go build what comes next. The world is waiting for the man on the other side of this. And so, honestly, are you?